Have you ever stood in silence while someone tried to provoke you, waiting for the fight, the reaction, the weakness they expected from you? What if, instead of giving them what they want, you gave them nothing? No anger, no explanation, just presence, just control. Most people think power means pushing back, fighting louder, proving your point. But the Stoics taught something radically different. They believed that the most commanding victories happen without noise, without retaliation, and, often, without anyone even realizing a battle was won. In this video, we'll explore 5 timeless tactics rooted in Stoic philosophy. Tactics that don't just defend you from enemies, but silence them from within. No force, no revenge, just unshakable strength. If you've ever wanted to walk away from chaos untouched, to respond with calm instead of rage, and to let your silence echo louder than their words, stay with me. What comes next might change the way you deal with every enemy you'll ever meet. 1. Power lies in restraint. What makes a warrior truly strong? It's not the speed of his strike or the sharpness of his blade. It's his ability to hold that blade in its sheath while everyone else rushes to fight. The strongest warriors rarely draw their swords, not because they fear battle, but because they've already won the war within. In a world obsessed with dominance, they've mastered something far more powerful: self-control. It's easy to mistake reactivity for strength. When a man jumps into every argument, when he lashes out at every insult, when he feels the need to prove himself at every turn, the world might call him bold. But the Stoics would call him a slave. Not to another man, but to his emotions, to his impulses, to whatever provocation is loud enough to stir him. And what kind of strength is that? A man who is controlled by the world is not strong. He's exposed, he's predictable, and worst of all, he's vulnerable to anyone who knows how to get under his skin. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's where the true fight happens, not in the streets, not on social media, not in boardrooms or family arguments. The real war is internal. And the man who cannot win that battle, who cannot command his own thoughts, his own urges, is already defeated, no matter how many people he shouts down or intimidates. Too many men confuse aggression with power. They think they need to assert themselves constantly, respond to every jab, and never let anything slide. But look closer. That's not confidence, it's insecurity wrapped in loudness. It's a desperate attempt to prove something that shouldn't need proving. Because when you truly know who you are, you don't need to fight every battle. You don't need to convince others of your worth. You just live it quietly and fully. The greatest warriors in history understood this. The ancient samurai didn't draw their swords to intimidate. They only moved when movement was necessary. The Stoics lived by the same principle, and even Sun Tzu wrote, "The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting." That is the essence of mastery, not in the battle itself, but in your ability to choose whether the battle even deserves you. Let's make this real. Think about the times you've reacted in anger. Maybe someone insulted you, challenged your intelligence, disrespected you publicly. You felt the surge rise, the words form, the impulse to strike back. But what did it get you? A few seconds of pride, maybe. A hollow sense of having won. But underneath that, there was likely exhaustion, doubt, and often regret. Now imagine a different version of yourself, one who holds the pause, who lets the words pass by without reacting, who chooses silence, not because you're afraid to speak, but because your peace is worth more than a petty argument. That version of you is the one people start to notice, not for the noise, but for the power behind the silence. When you stay calm while others lose control, when you hold your tongue while others lash out, you show a kind of power that can't be faked. It's not about fear. It's about knowing your energy is too valuable to spend on things that don't matter. Because every reaction, every emotional outburst, every moment spent in meaningless conflict is a resource lost. And the man who spends all his time reacting never has the clarity or strength to pursue what actually matters. The modern world throws 1,000 provocations at you every day. A passive-aggressive email at work, a stranger's insult online, a partner's careless comment. Social media thrives on outrage. The workplace is full of silent battles for status, and in your personal life, you'll find people who know exactly how to push your buttons just to see if they still can. But here's the truth. The Stoics knew deeply. The moment you react emotionally, you've stepped onto their battlefield. You're no longer acting from principle, you're playing by their rules. Seneca warned, "He who angers you conquers you." Let that sink in. Your enemy doesn't need to defeat you physically. If they can disturb your peace, they've already won. That's why the Stoic warrior doesn't waste time on fruitless fights. He chooses wisely. He protects his energy like a treasure. He knows that most battles are distractions dressed as duty, and he understands that silence, composure, and discipline are the real weapons of the wise. But let's be clear, this doesn't mean you back down from everything. There are moments when you must stand your ground, when your values, your boundaries, or your integrity are under attack. But when you respond, it's not from impulse, it's from purpose. You speak only when your words will change something. You act only when the time is right. That's not weakness. That's strategy. That's leadership. So before you react to the next insult, before you feel the pull to argue or clap back, stop and ask, is this a battle worth fighting? Does this serve who I want to become? Does this help me protect the peace I've worked so hard to build? More often than not, the answer will be no. And in that moment, your restraint becomes your strength. Your silence becomes your power, and your calm becomes the storm they never saw coming. In a world full of men who react, be the one who remains unmoved. Be the one who doesn't flinch, who doesn't explain, who doesn't respond just to be heard, because that kind of man commands respect without asking for it. That kind of man walks through chaos untouched. And that kind of man, the one who rarely draws his sword because he doesn't need to, is the one they'll never be able to defeat. Now let's continue, because in the next part you'll discover how the greatest victories are won, not through resistance, but through something even more powerful, the art of winning without war. 2. Win without war. There is a kind of strength that doesn't shout, doesn't strike, and doesn't need to be seen. It's the quiet strength of a man who chooses not to be pulled into every battle. The art of winning without war is not about outshining your enemies with force. It's about mastering the one thing they can't reach, your mind. And in a world that thrives on conflict, this kind of mastery is rare. But it's also what makes it unstoppable. Most of us were taught to believe that winning means conquering. That when someone insults you, you strike back. When someone disrespects you, you put them in their place. When someone tries to take from you, you fight to take it back. But what if real power wasn't about overpowering others? What if it was about not needing to fight at all? Sun Tzu said, "The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting." That line isn't just military strategy, it's a blueprint for living. Because the real battles aren't always fought with swords or fists. They're fought in offices, in families, in friendships, and especially in our own minds. And the man who wins is not the one who reacts to every threat. It's the one who knows when to stay still. Look around you. People argue over nothing. They take the bait, get pulled into online drama, respond to every slight, every opinion that opposes their own. They think they're standing up for themselves, but often they're just leaking power. Energy that could be spent building something meaningful is wasted proving a point to someone who doesn't matter. Now imagine this instead. Someone tries to provoke you. They say something just to get under your skin, and you don't flinch, you don't react, you don't respond, you just continue. That silence, that restraint, that's power, not weakness. Because in that moment, you are no longer playing their game. You're rewriting the rules. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, you don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you. And that is the secret. You are not required to react to everything. Not every insult needs a comeback. Not every challenge needs a response. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is none at all. Let me tell you a story. A man once worked in an office where a co-worker did everything to sabotage him, spread rumors, stole credit for his work, whispered doubts into the ears of their boss. At first, he responded to everything, tried to clear his name, tried to defend himself. But the more he reacted, the more exhausted he became, and the more satisfaction the other man seemed to take in his struggle. So one day, he stopped. No more defending, no more explaining. He focused only on his own work, did it with excellence, and let his actions speak. Weeks passed. The whispers continued, but there was no reaction to feed them. And slowly, the saboteur lost power. People began to see through the noise. In the end, the truth emerged, not through a fight, but through quiet strength. He didn't win by defeating his enemy. He won by outlasting him. You see, people who seek conflict are often starving for attention. They want you to react, because your reaction proves they can still control your mood, your mind, your peace. But what happens when you deny them that reaction? What happens when you remain still, when you protect your focus like a fortress? They lose. Not because you crushed them, but because they couldn't reach you. And this doesn't mean you're passive. It doesn't mean you let others walk over you. It means you are strategic. It means you know how to conserve your energy for the battles that actually matter. Because not every hill is worth dying on. Some battles are distractions, disguised as duty. Seneca said, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." When you fight every fight, you lose sight of the ones that truly count. Your energy is finite. Spend it with wisdom. Let your silence be your sword, and your discipline be your shield. Because when you learn to walk away from what doesn't serve you, you don't lose power, you gain it. And when the time does come to stand your ground, when something truly important is at stake, you'll be ready. Not exhausted from countless petty wars, but focused, sharp, and clear. That's what Stoicism teaches us. That restraint is not retreat, it's readiness. So ask yourself, how often have you burned hours, days, or even years of your life fighting battles you didn't need to fight? How many arguments have you won but still walked away feeling empty? How many times did you realize, long after the noise faded, that silence would have served you better? The goal isn't to win every argument. The goal is to be so composed that arguments can't shake you. To be so grounded that provocations feel like wind hitting a mountain. That's what it means to win without war. To be unbothered, unshaken, untouchable, and if you truly understand this, if you live it, not just know it, you become someone others can't manipulate. They may try, they may prod, poke, provoke, but you'll see through it, and they'll know that they cannot reach you unless you let them. That is power, not given by status, not earned through violence, but forged in silence, in self-control, in the quiet confidence of a man who no longer needs to prove anything. So, the next time someone tries to pull you into chaos, remember, you don't need to respond. You don't need to explain. Your peace is yours to keep, and your power lies not in the battles you win, but in the ones you refuse to fight. Let that thought sit with you, because in the next part, we'll take this even further. We'll explore what it means to become the kind of man who is respected not for his reaction, but for his presence. 3. Don't pick up the poison. There's an old parable that holds a truth many of us spend years learning the hard way. A wise master, calm and composed, was the target of constant insults from a bitter man in his village. Day after day, the man hurled words of hatred, trying to provoke a reaction, but the master never responded. Finally, a student, unable to contain his curiosity, asked the master, "Why do you allow this man to insult you without responding?" The master smiled and said, "If someone offers you a gift, and you refuse to accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" This is more than a clever saying. It's one of the most powerful Stoic teachings on how to handle disrespect, manipulation, and emotional warfare. When someone throws anger or negativity your way, they're offering you something. But here's the key. You don't have to take it. You don't have to carry their bitterness. You don't have to turn their insult into your pain. That's your choice. And your refusal to accept it, that's where your power begins. Too often we feel obligated to respond. Someone throws a jab, we jab back. Someone disrespects us, we fight to restore our name. But in doing so, we've already given them what they wanted: our energy, our focus, our peace. Epictetus put it plainly: any person capable of angering you becomes your master. Think about that. The moment you let someone else control your emotional state, they own you, even if it's just for a moment. And it's not just strangers or enemies who do this. It happens at work, when a colleague takes credit for something you did. It happens online, when a comment is designed to bait you into outrage. It even happens in close relationships, sometimes especially there, when someone lashes out, not because of anything you've done, but because they're carrying pain they don't know how to process. The truth is, most insults say more about the person throwing them than the person receiving them. So why would you make their suffering your own? Why would you carry the burden they're trying to offload? I once knew a man who had a co-worker constantly undermine him, whispering to the boss behind his back, twisting facts, making him look like a failure. At first, he fought back, corrected the record, spent his energy trying to defend himself. But the more he engaged, the worse it got. The tension grew, and so did his exhaustion. Then, one day, he stopped playing the game. He said nothing. He focused on his work, delivered results, let his actions speak. And slowly, something strange happened. The other man lost power. His attacks had no target to land on. His games became obvious, and eventually his influence faded. The first man didn't win by defeating him. He won by refusing to fight a battle that wasn't worth it. This is the Stoic way, to recognize that not all attacks deserve your attention. That silence can be stronger than any comeback. That dignity is not preserved by argument, but by restraint. Now ask yourself, how many times have you reacted in anger only to regret it later? How often have you let someone else's mood become your own? How many hours have you spent replaying words that were never yours to carry? The next time someone tries to offend you, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, is this really worth my energy? Does responding make me stronger, or does it just bring me down to their level? Because here's the reality. Your response defines you. not their words. And if you choose to stay composed, if you let their insult fall to the floor instead of carrying it home in your heart, you reclaim your peace. You hold your ground, not with force, but with wisdom. Marcus Aurelius said, "You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you." That's not weakness. That's sovereignty over your own mind. And when you embody that, people notice. You become the one who cannot be shaken, who doesn't flinch in the face of ridicule, who doesn't need to defend himself with words because his presence already speaks. That is rare, and that is powerful. Remember, those who insult you are often revealing their own wounds. They're trying to hand you a gift wrapped in resentment, but you don't have to open it. Let it stay with them. Let them sit with their own discomfort while you walk away free. This doesn't mean you avoid all conflict. There are times when you must speak, when injustice must be confronted, but those moments are rare. And even then, a Stoic speaks not from emotion, but from clarity. He chooses his words carefully. He does not aim to destroy, but to uphold truth. So much of what disturbs us in life comes from forgetting that we always have a choice. You may not control what others say, but you always control what you absorb, what you carry, what you choose to become part of your identity. And when you choose to let their words pass through you, when you decide not to take on their pain as your own, you become free. The world will never run out of people who project their bitterness, who lash out from insecurity, who seek to provoke you so they can feel powerful. But their power only exists if you give them yours. The Stoic refuses. So the next time someone insults you, disrespects you, or tries to bring you down, remember this. The gift you do not accept remains with the giver. Let them keep their anger. Let them hold on to their pain, and you walk away in peace. Because in the next part, we'll explore the one trait that makes this inner calm possible, even when everything around you is falling apart. Unshakable discipline. Let's keep going. 4. Be unreadable. Be untouchable. What makes a man truly dangerous? It's not the sharpness of his tongue, the size of his army, or the number of allies he keeps in his corner. It's something much more subtle, much harder to grasp. Unpredictability. The man who cannot be read, who does not respond on cue, who stays composed while others unravel. That is the man no enemy can conquer. Because no one can control what they cannot understand. In every arena of life, whether it's war, politics, business, or relationships, those who are most easily defeated are those who are the most predictable. If others can anticipate your emotions, your triggers, your next move, then you've already lost ground. They know how to push your buttons, how to throw you off course, how to provoke reactions that serve their agenda. But the moment you become unreadable, the moment you begin to move without warning and think without broadcasting, you change the game entirely. Sun Tzu once wrote, "Be extremely subtle, even to the point of formlessness. Be extremely mysterious, even to the point of soundlessness. Then you can be the director of your opponent's fate." That wasn't just poetic strategy. It was a blueprint for power. The Stoics understood this well. They knew that to remain calm when others expect chaos is to wield control in its most refined form. The man who conceals his emotions and masks his intentions frustrates those who wish to manipulate him. And the more unpredictable he becomes, the more mistakes his enemies make in trying to guess his next move. Look around, you'll see it everywhere. In workplaces, people lose power, not because they lack intelligence, but because their emotions are too easy to read. A boss knows exactly how to guilt them into overworking. A rival knows just how to provoke jealousy or insecurity. But the one who keeps his emotions under control, who listens more than he speaks, who doesn't flinch when challenged, that person becomes an enigma, and people fear what they can't predict. Take, for example, a man working in a high-pressure office full of gossip and power games. At first, he tried to defend himself every time a rumor spread. He clarified every misinterpretation, tried to prove his loyalty, and played the politics game with the best of intentions. But the more he fought back, the deeper he sank into the drama. His energy was constantly drained, his focus fragmented. Then something shifted. He decided to stop explaining. He stopped reacting. He became quiet, focused, and deliberate. He didn't give away his emotions. He let his results speak, and over time, the noise faded. People stopped dragging him into conflict, not because they had changed, but because he had become unreadable. And in that quiet presence, he gained more respect than any argument could have won him. Marcus Aurelius said, "Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present." That's the essence of adaptability and inner calm. The unpredictable man doesn't live in fear of the next move. He is ready for anything because his strength is not in what others see, but in what he silently builds within. Now consider the opposite. A man who wears his heart on his sleeve, whose reactions can be predicted with a glance, whose weaknesses are public knowledge. That man is easy prey. In business, his competitors can block his next step before he takes it. In relationships, manipulators can use guilt or anger to bend him to their will. His strength may be real, but it's exposed, and exposed strength is vulnerable. To be unreadable is not to be emotionless. It is to be measured. It is to be disciplined. It is to understand that your thoughts, your fears, and your desires are sacred, and that sharing them carelessly is not openness, but recklessness. The Stoic doesn't reject emotion. He refines it. He feels deeply but reveals selectively. He moves deliberately, not reactively. Are you predictable? Ask yourself. Do people know what you'll say before you speak? Can they push the same buttons and expect the same outcome every time? Can they count on your anger, your defensiveness, your need to explain? If so, then you are handing them the keys to your peace. The answer is not to shut yourself off, but to become more strategic. Speak less, observe more, move slower. Let people wonder what you're thinking. Let them guess where you stand. In that mystery lies your control. When they no longer know how to read you, they stop trying to control you. And that shift, the moment you become impossible to predict, is the moment you become impossible to defeat. Seneca once said, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." A man who spreads his emotions out for all to see, who explains every move, who reacts to every push, becomes scattered. But the man who holds his center, who knows when to speak and when to wait, becomes whole. And whole men are not easily broken. The modern world worships visibility. It teaches us to share constantly, to explain ourselves, to react quickly. But the Stoic knows that power grows in silence, that clarity comes from stillness, and that the man who speaks with intention rather than compulsion will always be heard more clearly, even when he speaks less often. In a world that rewards emotional chaos, your calm is your rebellion. In a culture obsessed with exposure, your mystery is your shield. And in a time where everyone is playing to be understood, your refusal to be predictable is what sets you apart. So choose wisely what you show. Choose wisely when you speak. And most of all, choose to remain anchored in yourself, not in their expectations. Because in the next part, we will uncover the final tactic, the one that turns silence into command, presence into power, and detachment into the ultimate form of respect. Let's keep moving. 5. Outgrow the noise. What if the most powerful response isn't revenge, not a clever comeback, not a fight won, but rising so high, so focused, so relentless in your growth that the people who once tried to bring you down simply can't reach you anymore? That's not an escape. That's real power. Because a man who masters himself doesn't need to silence his enemies. He simply outgrows them. We live in a world that tells you to respond to everything, defend yourself, argue, prove them wrong. But what if the wisest thing you could do was nothing at all? Not out of weakness, but because you've chosen a level of excellence so far above their reach, their noise no longer matters. Marcus Aurelius said it with clarity. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. In other words, the moment you stoop to their level, you lose something far more valuable than pride. You lose direction. Think of a lion walking through the savannah. The dogs bark. The smaller animals scatter. The wind kicks up dust. But the lion doesn't stop. He doesn't even look. He walks, calm, composed, knowing exactly who he is. That's what strength looks like. Not in reaction, but in restraint, in indifference to distractions that don't deserve your energy. Enemies will always exist. Competitors who hope to see you fail. Colleagues who whisper behind your back. People you once trusted who quietly hope you don't succeed. But here's the secret they don't want to admit. Nothing frustrates a person who wants to bring you down more than seeing you rise anyway. Unbothered, unapologetic, unreachable. Seneca reminds us, how much better to heal than to seek revenge from injury. That's Stoic wisdom in action. Instead of spending your energy fighting back, spend it building. Instead of proving yourself, improve yourself. Because when you're too busy elevating your mind, your craft, your discipline, there's simply no room for petty wars. But most people don't understand this. They waste years fighting shadows, responding to every criticism, arguing with people whose opinion has no impact on their future, defending themselves to those who never intended to see them clearly. That's how you lose your path, by walking sideways trying to please or fight every voice that doubts you. Imagine a man who starts a business. In the beginning, people mock him. They say he's dreaming too big, taking on too much, thinking too highly of himself. If he stops to defend every idea, prove every decision, argue with every critic, he builds nothing. But if he stays quiet, works with discipline, ignores the noise, and delivers results, suddenly the critics fall silent. Not because they changed their minds, but because they no longer matter. He's risen too far ahead. This is what it means to rise so high that no enemy can touch you. You don't crush them. You make them irrelevant. You don't destroy their voices. You stop hearing them. Because the volume of your growth drowns out the noise of their doubt. Ask yourself, how many times have you allowed someone's words to shape your actions? How often have you looked over your shoulder, second-guessing your path because someone didn't believe in it? How much time have you spent fighting small battles while the real goal waits for you in silence? The truth is, no one can stop you from rising except you. Your focus, your time, your energy, those are your weapons. Waste them on distractions, and you stay stuck. Protect them, and you become unstoppable. That's the real battlefield. Not against enemies, but against your own tendency to drift into things that don't matter. But rising above doesn't mean you ignore everything. It means you see clearly. You recognize what deserves your attention and what's just noise. You learn to ask better questions. Will this matter in a year? Does this serve the man I'm becoming? Or is this just another test to see if I'll break focus? Epictetus said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation." That line changes everything, because it means no one can pull you down without your permission. The insult only lands if you catch it. The attack only hurts if you open the door. The chaos only wins if you forget who you are. When you rise, truly rise, you reach a place where you no longer crave their approval or fear their attacks. You stop explaining yourself. You stop reacting. You simply move forward with such clarity and conviction that they're left talking to themselves. And that silence, that distance, is louder than any rebuttal could ever be. So let them talk. Let them doubt. Let them misunderstand. That's their journey. Yours is different. Yours is about building something so solid inside of you that no wind can shake it. Yours is about becoming someone so intentional that no one can bait you into fights that don't serve your future. The highest level of power is peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from everything going your way, but the kind you build within. The kind that doesn't flinch when tested, that doesn't shift with public opinion, that doesn't need revenge because it understands that the best way to silence your enemies is to be too far ahead to hear them. And yes, people will still try. They'll say you've changed. They'll say you're distant. They'll say you're cold. But what they're really saying is that they can't reach you anymore. And that, right there, is the victory. So the next time someone throws shade your way, tries to provoke you or pulls you into drama, ask yourself one question. Will this pull me higher or will it pull me off course? And if the answer is clear, walk away. Not with bitterness, not with anger, but with purpose, with grace, with that quiet smile of a man who knows exactly where he's going. Because when you stop explaining and start elevating, when you stop reacting and start refining, when you stop defending and start building, something happens. You enter a space that's reserved for the few, the disciplined, the focused, the undistracted. The men who rise not by stepping on others, but by stepping away from the chaos altogether. That's how you become untouchable. That's how you silence your enemies, by no longer needing to. And as we close this first part, let that truth settle in. Power is not found in domination, but in discipline, in choosing your battles, in walking past the noise, in building a life so focused, so purposeful, that the ones who tried to bring you down are left watching you disappear into the horizon. True power is not found in conflict, but in control, not control over others, but mastery over yourself. That is how you rise. That is how you win. And that is only the beginning. The world will always test you with conflict, with noise, with people who try to pull you off course. But true power isn't found in reacting to every challenge. It's found in mastering yourself, choosing calm over chaos, and rising so high that no attack can touch you. The Stoics taught us that your peace is yours to guard and your energy is too precious to waste. If something in this spoke to you, type "stillness wins" in the comments. And if you're walking this path of strength and discipline, consider subscribing for more. The next video will take you even deeper into the mindset of those who cannot be shaken. Until then, stay grounded, stay focused, and keep rising.